A playlist original.
Shoot me.
No, I can't.
Do it! Very good.
Well, how do you do it?
Magic.
From the director of Batman Begins, a friendship that became a rivalry.
A real magician invents something new.
I suppose you have such a trick.
Actually, I do.
What happened?
It was the greatest magic trick I've ever seen.
A rivalry that became a battle.
He has no trick. It's real.
Now, with every twist, a new secret is revealed.
How does he do it?
With every turn,
Come on!
another life hangs in the balance. And nothing can prepare you for what you can't see coming.
He can do what magicians pretend to do.
Hugh Jackman, Christian Bale, Michael Caine, Scarlett Johansson.
No more secrets.
Secrets of my life.
The Prestige, directed by Christopher Nolan, starts October 20th, rated PG-13.
All right, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Back to the Blockbuster Presents Deep Dives, where we talk about some of the movies that you loved, or maybe some movies that you might have forgotten about. This will not be a long, lengthy intro introducing the guests. Dustin is back. We promise to be back more often. We are working on getting him on more, like fairly often. Between my schedule and his schedule, it's just been pretty busy, but we're working it out. So, welcome back, Dustin.
Thank you. It's awesome to be here. I love this show. I love collaborating with you. I think your audience is you know, they love film and they love, like, you know, some of the oddball picks that we've been doing, and I think it's just a lot of fun. So I'm super happy to be back.
Yeah, and it's a busy time for the podcast because there's this show which is built into it, but want to keep it going. This will be episode, I believe, 30. A lot of people have asked me why haven't there been more. For those pay that close attention to what the deep dive show was before, it was with someone else, and then they left, and so then there was like a gap between like, oh, like, do I want to keep the deep dive, and then playlists, our podcast network, like those episodes do really well, so you should find a way to keep the deep dive spin off. So that's when it evolved into like, all right, let's get different people on and they can pick the movies. So that because of that lull and because of like trying to find like guests, that's why there's only 30. This will be the 30th one so far, but there will be more definitely being cranked out soon. It's just also a busy time as well. Like, we have the deep dive spinoff going, we have the regular news show going, we're also doing Tales of Horror this month and next month on Back to the Blockbuster.
Saw that.
All horror movies. So a lot of people have reached out for that. So it's, you know, it's busy on one end where I'm like, oh, maybe we took on too much. But on the other hand, it's good to be busy because like a lot of people are interested in joining the show and talking about movies. So can't complain about that, I guess.
Yeah, no, and I'm so psyched to be on more regularly. I think if people are liking these with you and I, like I said, kind of, you never know what film you're going to get from us, and I think, you know, I'm excited to bring some more. I just told you before we started recording, I have a whole my bag is full, guys. It's full of some really good stuff. So like, I think they'll be eaten well. Let's put it that way.
Pleasantly surprised.
Yeah.
You picked a movie by a director that everyone loves. Actually, let me take that back. I was hanging out over the weekend about this director, and I was like, yeah, we were like talking about directors who have never made bad movies, and this is a director I named.
Sure.
And I can't tell if my friend was just trying to sometimes he just likes to like be different for the sake of argument.
Oh, I hate that.
But he was like, well, he didn't really like, this will kind of give away who this is a little bit. He didn't really like what he did with his Batman movies.
Oh, God.
Because he's like a comic book junkie. So I was surprised when it hurt my soul when he told me that he liked Batman versus Superman more than The Dark Knight. I was like,
immediate. That's an immediate disqualification right there.
I never heard anyone say that. Now, he was so strong in his convictions that I was like, all right, I kind of believe that you believe that. So there's that. But for the most part, no one has anything bad to say about this director at all. If anything, based on the movie that you picked, because this is the last of these kind of movies that he's made. He's only made big movies
Sure.
since then. I will say this is the only like quote unquote bad thing I'll say about him. I wish he would find time to make movies like the one in question again. But like given a recent interview, he said that he's in a position where he can make big movies and he wants to keep making them. So I
Yeah.
respect that. But there's nothing wrong with going back to like mid-budget $40 million movie.
Yeah.
if you want to.
Right.
But I'll let you do the honors of what movie that you chose because you did pick it. I had no place in picking it. So
Yeah, I mean, this is one of my favorite movies. This is one of those movies for me that I could watch once a week. If I had the time, I would definitely do so. It does something to my brain that I am a fan of, and it's one of my favorite Christopher Nolan movies, and that movie is The Prestige.
Nice. Did this come out the same year? It came out the same year as The Illusionist, right? So we had like two.
It was weird, yeah.
Two movies about magic in the same year.
You gotta wonder who scheduled that, right? And did they tack The Illusionist on to like that? Said they were like put it out early just to capitalize on some of the, because a lot of people. It was weird because Nolan did in 2005. Obviously, he put out Batman Begins, which huge success, huge. And your friend who's a fanboy, I don't know how he cannot like Batman Begins. That's weird.
I know.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give him The Dark Knight Rises isn't as solid as it could be, but we all make mistakes, and it's still a great watch, and we still appreciate it.
I love it.
Anything Nolan's done was that's just that. I might step in it here, but anything Nolan's done with Batman is better than anything that Zack Snyder has done with Batman. Now,
I mean, I will piggyback on that.
I will. Yeah, I will say though, we were robbed by not getting like a full-on Batman film. Based on Zack Snyder's Batman, based on the fight scene in BVS, which is whatever. I'll give him that, but track record to track record. So, it doesn't stack up. So he did, I think in 2005, he did Batman Begins. And then I want to say 2006, The Prestige came out, or was it 7?
Yeah, 2006. Yeah.
So back to back. Like back to
kind of
back.
hard. I mean, for anyone that doesn't know, doing it takes a lot of time. I mean, Batman Begins is the kind of movie that takes a lot to do and a lot to prep and a lot to do in post production. I imagine there was some overlap between getting like maybe with Batman Begins in post and then maybe starting this. It depends on like when the shooting schedule started on The Prestige, but it's not easy doing back-to-back movies that come out within like a year of each other. It's pretty unheard of. I mean, some people do. I mean, back in the day, Steven Spielberg did Schindler's List and Jurassic Park at the same time, and that's honestly what got him through making Schindler's List was doing Jurassic Park because he had to go like he's making this really heavy drama, and then he gets to go play with fake dinosaurs after that. So it is possible, but it's really I think it's hard to do that and have both movies come out exceptionally well because there's a lot of like time that goes into making films in general, and then when you do one that close to each other, it's even harder to make the quality just as good.
Yeah, it's a big Warner Brothers studio picture. I mean, and also he ported over 1/3 of the cast from Batman Begins. You got Christian Bale in there. You got Michael Caine in there. I think that's it from Batman, right? So yeah, maybe he was just leaving the scripts for The Prestige on the lunch tray every time they would go break on Batman Begins or something. But I love directors who find the people they love to work. Scorsese's another one, whatever, and they have like a crew of people. Tarantino, obviously, so this is no exception to that rule. He must have. I mean, Christian Bale in this role. Geez, man. I love Hugh Jackman. I will say I resonate more with the Borden character, with Christian Bale's character, than I do Hugh Jackman. I don't know if that's a hot take or not, but
I mean, they both have their issues. They're both interesting
Well,
I mean, I think
so do I.
when I was watching again, I was like, oh, do they make one come off more like, I don't want to say evil, but more like one has more problems than the other.
Sure.
But they're both like trying to one up each other, and like there's all this themes of like jealousy, and especially when it comes to like not just art, but like it's almost like you can make this like about any kind of, it could be any workplace drama, honestly.
Yeah.
Like it could have like, you just like we're both going for the same promotion, and I want to do this thing better than you, so I'm considered the best
Yeah.
at what I do. I mean, these kind of themes and tales are as old as time, and like but they still resonate for a reason,
Yeah.
because a lot of people kind of live in that kind of jealousy, and like especially when you're doing the same thing, and it can eat you alive, as we can see in this movie.
Totally. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, and the thing is it's, from what I understand, so this movie's based on a book, and that book was actually based either loosely or somewhere around, these famous like dueling magicians in London, and I didn't look too much into the historical aspect of it, obviously, but there's a lot. I mean, when you think right, what's going on in the movie, there's just a whole other layer, right? And
Well,
so,
it's like one thing. It's one big sleight of hand. The whole movie is
yeah,
the movie is its own magic trick. And I kind of wish I remember, because I haven't watched The Illusionist in a really long time. And if it had the same kind of not necessarily twisty turns kind of thing, but if it kind of played itself the same way as far as its narrative, I can't
yeah,
really remember because it's been so long since I've seen it.
yes, me too.
The Illusionist came out first, August 18th, 2006. This came out in October of 2006. This one made more money. The Illusionist didn't make money too, but
Nice.
I kind of feel like The Illusionist got lost, even though it came out first. It seemed like it got lost in the shuffle between the two movies.
Sure.
I think because on paper, The Illusionist feels like a smaller movie. I do know that it feels like it's not as like, not like The Prestige is expensive by any means. It's a $40 million movie, and The Illusionist is a smaller movie. Like I think it has like a $16 million budget, but Nolan was able to make The Prestige feel bigger than The Illusionist, feel more important. That might sound bad, but like there was more at stake. It felt like. I mean, I maybe if I watch The Illusionist again, like now, I'll feel differently. But
Yeah,
having watched this for what we were talking about, like it felt like there was just so much more at stake, and and if anything, this is a really great like character driven drama too. And again, I guess like trying to figure out like, I mean, there aren't any, honestly, there might not be any sides to take. They are both very flawed people, but like the whole time, there'd be times when I was watching it, I was like, "Yep, Hugh Jackman, trash." I was like, "Nope, there's no redeeming qualities there." But then I was like, they both are doing the same thing to each other, especially by the end of it. I mean,
no, for sure. I mean, and then it is a tale of devotion to your craft. Number
Right.
one, it is a tale of obsession. It is a tale of secrets.
Yeah.
For sure. And a lot, I mean, there's stuff that's happening on the fringes of the main storyline that never really gets fully, and I feel like this is the beginning of Nolan being ambiguous, right? And people in Nolan's career, he's there was a couple dozen, I guess, like plot threads from the Dark Knight trilogy that are still unanswered, right? And that's on purpose. And he likes to say it's on purpose, at least. He just recently came out with Tenet and was like, don't worry about the mechanics of it. We don't want you to think about how it's possible. Just go on that ride. And to me,
it.
Yeah, and to me, I love that, like, and he manages to weave that very, very carefully, where it doesn't feel lazy. He doesn't feel like, oh, they couldn't figure out how the time travel, whatever. So now he's just saying just not to worry about it. But same in Inception. There's pieces of Inception that I'm like, wait a minute, okay, and you're like doing the math in your head, like if they're 3 levels down and you know, and he floats up here and like, so I think this is the beginning of that because he's sort of, there are some very big ambiguous questions in this, and
Yeah.
I was not aware of the fucking rabbit hole of theories on this film about a number of things, but mainly, okay, and I'm sort of jumping ahead, but mainly the Tesla
Oh
created
yeah.
cloning device
Yeah.
because man, if you go on YouTube, what I like to do before we do these episodes is I'll watch the movie again, and then I'll go over to YouTube and I'll look at all sorts of breakdowns and whatever just to just get really researched. But man, on this one, the last couple days, like I've been in a fucking prestige hole, and it's been insane because so many people have so many different strong opinions about what's
About what?
actually happening when he steps into the machine. So I don't know if you want to go there now or you want to sort of lay out the plot or whatever, but
I'll lay
it's
out the plot real quick for people that don't know.
sure.
I that's interesting to hear because like you'll have to educate me on some of those because I know there is like my friend actually told me a lot about. He was like, dude, there's some like I mean, but just like with almost any Christopher Nolan movie, like there's more to like kind of dive into than what's on the page. But yeah, for all those that don't know, like I said, it's directed by Christopher Nolan. He co-wrote the film with his brother Jonathan Nolan. It follows two rival stage musicians in Victorian London who feud over a perfect teleportation illusion, played by Hugh Jackman and Christian Bale. The cast also includes Michael Caine, Scarlett Johansson, Rebecca Hall, Andy Serkis, and David Bowie for good measure. Like you said, the film reunites Nolan and actors Bale and Caine from Batman Begins, also working with the same cinematographer, production designer, and editor from Batman Begins as well. When the film was released, it received generally positive reviews from most critics, grossed $109 million worldwide on a $40 million budget, and received Academy Award nominations for Best Art Direction and Best Cinematography.
Yeah. No, I mean, and all
It's
of
a
that
beautiful looking
is
movie.
well deserved. Yeah. Yeah, the film again, the film is about these two dueling magicians coming up through the ranks in London. There is a famous magic trick from that time called the transported man.
Right.
It is a real magic trick. There that you can Google it. You can look into like old extremely old literature and some photos and mainly drawings of like the different versions of the transported man. But
Yeah, yeah.
you know, the one of the themes of the film, and I love how they do this, and most importantly, you know, one of my favorite lines in all of film is, you know, the "Are you watching closely?" You know, that's one of my
Yeah,
favorites.
yeah,
I use it I use it all the time, probably more than I
yeah.
should. But they break down you know, and again, this is all real from that time period, and it still stands to this day. But they break down a magic trick into 3 parts. The pledge is the first part. The magician shows something ordinary like a deck of cards or a dove. They may ask the audience to inspect it to confirm it's real. The second part is the turn. The magician takes the ordinary object and makes it do something extraordinary. And the third and final part, the prestige, the magician tops the disappearance by making the object reappear. Okay, so under that framework, this film does sort of work. The film is
And that
called
three.
yeah,
Yeah,
and you
yeah,
know,
yeah.
and Nolan famously works in threes, right? And if you look at
Right.
any of his movies, Insomnia or no, maybe not that one, but Inception is what I meant to say.
Yeah.
Inception. What was his first big studio film where time's like
So
going backwards?
so yeah, it's like Memento.
Memento works in
So
threes. Yeah.
yeah. So like yeah, Inception does as well.
Dunkirk. Yeah, because
Dunkirk.
it's like the land, air, and sea bit. I mean, it's
Yeah,
genius stuff. You know, Oppenheimer, I
yeah,
think, is a 3 kind of a thing too. So you have the 3 parts of this magic trick. The film is called The Prestige. So are we watching the reveal? Is he making something reappear? You know, so it sort of gets into that territory. But you kind of break, you kind of break it down into this three act of a magic trick sort of framework, and man, it becomes sort of a mind bender because you're not really sure. Once the movie ends, you immediately want to go back, because what's crazy about it is they play up this theme of, and in the end, a dying Hugh Jackman, Lord Caldwell or whatever the fuck his name was at that point. He says to him as he's like about to die, like, he was never about anything but the look on their faces. That's what,
surprise.
yeah.
Yeah.
And Michael Caine in the beginning famously, lays out the three parts, and he says, now you're wondering what's what, but you really don't want to look too far, because you want to believe the illusion. You want to be mystified. You want to believe for one moment that real magic exists. And that, to me, is so powerful in this film. Just that idea,
Yeah, I agree with that too. And I do agree that it's the kind of movie that makes you want to go back and watch it again, because either you're paying attention to the whole, like, it feels like you're going to be set up for some kind of like the movie being an illusion itself, or playing some kind of sleight of hand trick on you. Like, there's going to be more than like what there appears to be. But then then on the one hand, like I watched it the first time for this, I was paying attention to like the character relationships more than like the whole idea of the magic tricks and all that, because I kept getting stuck on the notion of trying to figure out like if there's one good guy or one bad guy. Because a lot of movies want you to like pick one or the other. There are a lot of people that think neither one of them are good or evil. They kind of work in a like kind of gray area. I do think that Hugh Jackman's character, he's so obsessed with besting Christian Bale's character that I mean, it even cost him his kind of friendship with Cutter, with Michael Caine's character. Like, it feels like that makes him a little bit more of not necessarily the villain, but like the one with the most like angst, I guess, of the two. The one with the most bitter. It feels like he has the most bitterness attached to him.
Right.
So then I'm watching it like, okay, how can no one like think that one's not more bad than the other? But then like by the end of it, there really isn't. Like, at the end of the day, you have two people that really want to excel at what they are trying to be good at. And like, a lot of people that you happen to be involved in art, whether you're a writer, director, whatever it might be, you do want to be the best in your field. There is a drive in you to succeed in that. Now, throw in having a friend or a partner who also is in that field. There is going to be, whether small or big, some kind of like a little bit of competition between the two of you. Now, it's also a matter of like how far you take it. Sometimes it can be friendly competition, and that can kind of make you both better in the long run. But then there are people that like want to be better at that thing than someone else, and will go to great lengths to do that. So that part of the story I was already intrigued with. And then I'm like, all right, well, now I got to pay attention to like all the magic stuff that was going on, because I'm sure there was like a lot of trickery at hand too. So when I first saw this in theaters, I remember being like floored by how it like unraveled, because I wasn't even thinking offhand like in the theater on that opening night that like, all right, I'm expecting some kind of like twist or anything like that. It wasn't like the movie itself wasn't promoted that way either. They did a good job of like not, like if this was an M. Night Shyamalan movie, it would have been clear that like something was going to be amiss by the end of it. And so there's like you said, there's so many layers to it that you have to go back and pay attention to different aspects of it when you watch it. Because there's so much going on.
No, yeah, and you bring up a great point. I mean, we were all watching the characters, right? We were all watching to see how this thing ended. We had not established that Nolan was a big twist guy yet. We knew that he did interesting stuff in Memento, and then he just did Batman Begins, which did not. There was kind of a little twist at the end with the Joker.
And then like Insomnia was more of like a straightforward. I mean, because it's a remake of another movie and a remake of another movie, so that was more straightforward. Like the only thing that he could really do to impress with Insomnia was like other than pull really solid performances out of Al Pacino and Robin Williams, was it has a look of like, if like a lot of people talk about Insomnia as the lesser of his movies, and I guess it is. Like, I mean, to me, I think Tenet's good, but like I prefer Insomnia. So I never really put Insomnia at the bottom of that list. Like, and by the way, guys, putting any of these movies at the bottom of the list doesn't mean that they're bad. It just means that
Sure.
in like rank of greatness, that's how you're doing that. You see in Insomnia like the shades of what he's going to do later in his career, like some of the shots that he's establishing. So
Mhm.
like, they're a little bit more straightforward, but so you're right. Like, Memento has the kind of like the kind of narrative with the time and all that, and like flipping that script a bit. But
Yep.
there was nothing in him, nothing that he wasn't doing at so many of these movies in a row where it's like, oh, he's gonna like pull the rug out from under us. There's no
Yeah.
impression
Yeah.
that was gonna happen.
So this, I mean, Memento like blew my mind apart. It actually does every time I watch it, and I almost can't
Yeah.
like even sit here and talk about it because I'll get confused as to how the mechanics work. But if I just watch it, when that car spins around at the end, it's like, oh my, like everything makes perfect sense when you're watching it, right?
Yeah.
And so and it's a different kind of movie, and I think they gave him, from what I understand, they said, okay, impressive with Memento. I think that in the back of their minds, like they were kind of looking for someone to court for a darker Batman that still could appeal to mainstream audiences, and so I think they gave him Insomnia as a test, and
Probably see if he can do a studio movie too,
and he
like,
nailed
how,
it,
like,
right? And so then they gave him Batman. The rest is history. But the Prestige here literally represents probably the first time we get an actual Nolan twist, which he's like somewhat famous for. In most of his movies, some of his movies, whatever. And the film itself is a magic trick, and part of a magic trick is to divert your attention. So what has he done? He gets this incredible story and these incredible actors, incredible characters, an incredible time in history. And he presents this whole thing to you, and as an audience member, like you said, you're watching the story, you're watching the characters, you're watching this battle between these two guys, right? The funny part is the magic trick is right in front, like as with all magic tricks, it's literally right in front of your face, but you don't want to see it because you're focused on what's happening with the characters.
Yeah, something else. Yeah, you're paying attention to other things.
Yeah, because his assistant, Borden's assistant, I can't, and now is the fucking guy, I can't think of what they called him. His twin brother that's dressed up.
I know you're talking about.
Yeah, I can't think of his name at the moment. It's just this weird guy that's always around, and like, and you really don't think anything of it whatsoever.
Yeah.
They even get so pompous to like show you the Chinese magician who's like carrying the fishbowl around between his legs to show you like, hey, there's people that are that committed to their craft, and then there's this weirdo guy who shows up and assists me with my with babysitting and with magic tricks and all that shit. And we don't put it together because we don't want to. We want to watch the story. And that I think is the brilliance of this movie. One of the brilliant things about this movie, and there's a lot of Harry Houdini kind of winks and nods. They don't ever mention him, obviously, but it really gets to the heart of it is, that there's this 3-act sort of thing happening, and you don't realize that you're sort of part of it because you're waiting for the big, and at the end, obviously, you get the reality of it, or so we think. I will go into some of these fucking theories when you're ready, but Jesus, I mean,
yeah,
it is a lot. And let me ask you, okay? And in your mind, when you think of the machine that was designed by Tesla for Hugh Jackman, his character, What do you
Right.
think happens when he goes into the machine? Like, what is your perspective on it?
Oh Jesus. Well, I'm trying to think. Like on paper, it looks like. I mean, I don't want to be wrong. I guess there's like different theories as to what happens when he goes into it, because like you could look at it as like when he goes into it, it creates just a like replica of him, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like that was like my thought, but then a part of me was like that feels like too fantastical for something like this,
Sure.
I guess. But I guess that could be what it does. I mean, because I mean, that was the only thing I could think of at the time, but that does appear like what it does at one point during like when they are breaking down like stuff towards the end, like how like
Yeah.
showing like kind of the breakdown of like the climax and everything. That was my theory that it was making like replicas of it, but it kind of the only thing that makes me not think that entirely is because everything else feels very real world like what we're dealing with in the
Sure.
movie, even though
Yeah.
we're dealing with magic. So like that's the only thing that makes me question that, but that was my first thought. It seems like it just makes a like not necessarily perfect replica because
Sure.
they are very the personalities yeah, as we see when they have like the twins, quote unquote, are different. Like they end up
Yeah.
like they have different shades of their personality. They end up falling in love with different women as well.
Yeah.
You know, so they are different, but like it felt like it just made like a perfect replica. But I could be wrong. Like, what do you think it does?
Well, so on paper, like you said, and let me get your explanation right, because this is where we're going to get really into the weeds here for a second in this episode. So that explanation would have to do two things. Then
Right.
it would have to, because he steps in, he hits the button, the thing comes out, and then we see that a little trap door very quickly opens up and drops him down, usually into a watery grave.
Yeah.
Basically. But then at the same time, there's another version of him that's up in the rafters, right?
Yeah.
So it would have to, the machine would have to clone you in place, right?
Yeah.
It would, but at the same time, take you and throw you up into the rafters. And so in the beginning, when you see all of the hats, all whether whatever, and that sort of suggests that okay, this thing, it is a cloning thing, it is happening. Tesla was very, very famous for having designs and also designing things that were very secretive. Like, and this is all fact, obviously. This isn't in the movie, and I don't know if he ever designed a cloning machine, but he built this tower at Wardenclyffe in New Jersey that was capable. I mean, literally, capable apparently of wireless communication and all these things. Okay, and so when Tesla died, his assistant, who's played by Andy Serkis in the film, the real guy in real life, was instructed to like go and bury most of his devices somewhere where the government could never find them, whether they were real or not. I mean, whatever, right? But if there was a guy, and it was rumored that he had machines like this cloning machine. It was rumored that Tesla very famously gave a speech to the big electricity companies one time. This was actually what undid Tesla, because he's the greatest inventor of our time. And then he gets up in front of all these big, because electricity back then was oil. It was big oil and shit. That's the version of in the late 1800s, early 1900s, like that, whatever. And he gets up in front of these guys. He's like, we can pull power from the atmosphere and the sun. And they started pelting him with tomatoes basically. And then they spent, so he was on the cutting edge, right? And so for a character in a film to design a cloning machine or whatever, it's amazing that they brought in Tesla. It's even more amazing that they chose David Bowie. The problem is this. If you think, because we do see a version where he steps in there and the very first time he uses it on himself, and it clones him. So there's a version of him in the cage, And then outside the cage is another version that's like, oh my God. And he grabs the gun and shoots him. So then there's like okay, I need to recalibrate this. So this, if we're believing that what you said, he steps in, he becomes cloned, the clone stays there, is dropped through a door, and then the real version of him is transported up into the rafters somewhere else in the theater. Okay, that's one. But then all of that is completely undone in the end with one line, because he says to Christian Bale, he says, "Do you know how hard it was night after night climbing into that machine and not knowing if I'm the man who's going to come out of the machine or I'm the man who's going to be dropped into the fucking, the watery grave?" So it sort of breaks your whole thing, because if he's willingly cloning himself just to die and have another version of himself carry on, that first of all, why wouldn't you just stop?
it's not even like, that's true.
So that, to me, I've been wrestling with that, and I've been, no one has a definitive answer, and of course it's Christopher Nolan, so we're never going to get one. And I think a lot of people who watch this episode now, they're going to be like, oh fuck, I never thought of that, or maybe they thought of it and they're obsessed with it like I am now. But a lot of people believe, and this is the conspiracy theory tinfoil stuff, and there is some evidence to suggest that it's real, that the machine never worked, and that the dummies, or the bodies in the fucking water cells in the end, like, are just dummies. They're just like rubber, whatever.
Not even real.
Yeah, because if you remember, like, they find that guy who looks exactly like Hugh Jackman. They call him Root in the movie.
Yeah.
So I mean, you could have some sort of thing there where that guy comes out and does the presentation, and he gets dropped, and then he's up in the rafters. It would be an easy trick with two guys who look just like each other. One hangs out upstairs, the other one gets hit by a bunch of meaningless electricity and dropped.
Yeah.
So there's three theories right there. So, and I don't know which one's real,
And you're right, and like one of them, it's very risky, because you're just like, okay, there's no guarantee that it's gonna turn out the way you want it to.
Right.
And like, it's interesting too, because it could be explained, like, not entirely, but at a certain point, like, did it even matter if like the right version of himself came out of it, because he was just so obsessed with, like, perfecting this so much that maybe the one constant was probably always like, whatever version of him came out of it, the one constant was this whole, like, this trick is going to work, and that was like the one constant between all of them. But I get your point too. It'd be a risky endeavor every night, or however often you're doing this trick.
Sure.
I like hoping for the best.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Right. I mean, and there's more, and there's more evidence, right? So a large portion of the film is Hugh Jackman reading Christian Bale's journal, but at the end it's switched. Christian Bale's in jail for murdering, which we'll get to, for murdering Hugh Jackman's character, and he's telling, the only time we see the machine work and him kill the other version of himself is in his journal, in his words.
So the way he's described, that could just be another, like,
a whole different ruse. It could be a whole ruse,
Yeah, it could be a trick.
And who's to say, right? Because we don't even get to Tesla until he kidnaps Christian Bale's assistant, and he wants the key to his journal. What's the key? And he gives them the name Tesla. So, which I mean, come on. I mean, was that a mistake? Was that just a gag? Like,
all part of the plan,
right? It's so bizarre, and I know there's more in the book, and I know the author of the book actually famously, like, just fucking totally shit talk Christopher Nolan for this version of the film, because I guess there's a more expansive version of the story in the book, but I haven't read the book.
Yeah, I haven't read it either. And I think too, like, I think it's interesting too, what makes the movie so interesting too, there's always this sort of, like, trying to figure out like who is one step ahead of the other.
Yeah.
So like you think like one person might be a step ahead of one character, and then it's like no, that person like, and like you said, like a
Sure.
lot of the stuff that's like in the book and everything like that, like so many things could be a trick or planted. Like, oh, I know he's gonna eventually read it or see it, and I want to lead in one way when like he totally should be going another.
Sure.
So it really is just hard to tell like who's telling the truth
Mhm.
at any given moment.
Yeah.
I guess that's what makes it so interesting too, because you're just wondering like, all right, like when was any of this kind of like real, or
Yeah.
is any of it real? You know, and they know each other so well too. So it's that's what makes it interesting too. Like they're both like, to say, war at one point close, and they were, you know, friendly. They both until, well, that's another thing too, because like, you know, it's not just that Hugh Jackman's character is jealous. There's a lot of like, you know, the whole thing with Piper Perable's character dying in the water tank. That is
Mhm.
another thing that sets off his anger toward Christian Bale's character. And you know, kudos to Hugh Jackman, because I you know, he gets a lot of credit for playing Wolverine, which is great. He is great in the role, but like
Mhm.
when I had to think of like two Hugh Jackman performances that stand out as like his best, it's either this one or Prisoners.
Mm.
And he's good at conveying like real raw emotion, and like I think it's a moment where he's asking him about like the tying the knot and like
Which
everything,
knot
and
did you tie? Yeah.
which knot did you tie, and he's basically like, I can't remember. He's like, I've been going through it all through my head and I can't.
Yeah.
And when he's like talking back to him, like, you can't remember, like he's just so like
Yeah.
filled with like rage, and you can just feel it, and it's not over the top by any means.
Yeah.
It's not like it never goes quite too far.
No.
But he conveys that kind of like, this is the moment of like, okay, like, especially because Christian Bale, I don't know if he was directed to play it this way or if it's just how it was written. It seems sincere at first, like almost like, I'm so sorry, but I don't know. And then
Yeah.
it almost sounds like very flippant, kind of like, well, I don't know. I thought
Yeah.
about it. I really don't know how this happened. And like almost you should feel like you should convey more concern, or because this, you know, this someone died and someone
Mhm.
close, you know, he died.
Yeah.
Like, but Christian Bale is so like nonchalant, and I don't know if he's just nonchalant because he really is trying to think like, oh, what, did I do it wrong? How did I do it wrong? And since it's not someone that was really close to him, he's not overthinking it too much, or not seeing how much it's, you know, hurting someone else. But yeah, the way they both play it is both. It really makes you understand, like, okay, this is what sets this off. One, you know,
Right.
what makes them become completely at odds.
Here's the thing. Are you watching closely? Because I'm gonna blow your mind right now. He doesn't know which knot he tied because he didn't tie the knot his brother did.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. And he feels terrible about what happened because they were taking turns, you know, working with that whatever.
Yeah.
The brother who tied the knot probably fully well knows what knot he tied, right? But he's sort of like the asshole, like, oh, things happen, and you know, stays away from that, right?
Yeah.
The other brother feels so terribly bad because to him, one of his friends' wives was just killed, and he goes to he feels so bad that he shows up at the funeral because he you know, he has to maintain the cover that he is one guy, but he is also a separate human with emotions. So he goes to the funeral. And he when he's asked, the reason there's that confusion, almost that flippancy, because he doesn't know at all, because it's not him, it's the brother, which is absolutely crazy when you think about it.
Yeah, no, it's crazy to think that. And that's why he really is like, he's like, that's true. Like,
he's like, I have no fucking idea. Like, I didn't, but he can't say I wasn't there. Like they made this pledge right to each other, like as twins. And imagine what kind of life that would be if you
to fully commit to it too. Like, you know, like even to the point of like, we got match our injuries and whatnot too, like all that stuff.
Yeah,
like,
right.
We are fully committed to the ruse. Other than, you know, like when it comes to the two ladies that come into our lives.
Yeah.
Which is fairly interesting too. I wanted to ask you about I guess Scarlett Johansson first. Because I was talking to a friend that saw it, and he was like, oh, it just feels like such a thankless role that she, like, for someone of her, even then in 2006, of her stature, to like kind of take like this still seems like a random female role. I didn't necessarily think that. Like, I mean, she does do things to drive the plot forward.
Yeah.
But I guess on I guess at first glance it can look like it's just a thankless kind of role. Like, do you think it is, or do you think there's more to?
So I don't. I love Scarlett Johansson. I think she's a great actor. I don't think she's. God. I don't think.
Did she feel like she was out of her depth here? A little
Well,
bit.
she does one of the worst.
Yeah, I was like thinking,
British
and I like her
accents.
a lot too.
Yeah.
Like, and she's done the accent before, and like I
Yeah.
forgot what other movie. Like, I mean, like, and it, like, it's one of those things where like she acts the role well,
Sure.
but like when I listen to the accent, it sounds like an American trying to sound.
Yeah, she
British.
sounds like, and I always like joke around with my girlfriend because we watched it together months ago for the first time.
Yeah.
She had never seen it, and of course I'm like, we have to like turn the lights down, light some candles, watch The Prestige, you know.
Yeah,
and I always to this day I still joke about it, but this is how she sounds. She's like Fretty. Fretty. She just says Freddy that's all she says. And it's clearly Scarlett Johansson just saying Fretty.
Yeah.
You know? It's so bad. I think
it sounds especially not as good when you're listening to like Rebecca Hall talk, because she is an English actress.
Oh man, yeah.
So like
mismatch,
even though they're not like you know, they're not like commiserating and like scenes together, like so you're like, so it's like a separate thing, but like you're sort of like, one sounds very authentic, the other one sounds like,
it should have in my opinion should have probably been Emily Blunt in that role, but you know,
that would have been good.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because I get it. I get Scarlett Johansson was, I mean, and continues to be probably one of the more bankable actresses of her generation, and
She's
pretty
awesome.
reliable.
Mm-hmm.
And I she probably wanted to work with Christopher Nolan, and she said she really liked the part, which I also like. I always question sometimes when people say that, because like there isn't a ton to the role, like as far as like depth, you know what I mean?
Sure.
So that's why I was like, that was interesting when she was like, she really liked the part and really wanted the role.
Yeah.
I've heard other actors say that about other parts where it's like, oh, like maybe there was something more there on the page that didn't make it to the screen.
Yeah, and I think that, you know.
And also, before I forget,
No,
Christopher Nolan has always, despite how great he is as a filmmaker, has always gotten shit for not giving his female characters much depth or much characterization at all. And I didn't really realize this was a problem until I had to rewatch some of his movies just for this show.
Yeah,
I mean, we did Insomnia on here before, and I was like, oh, even though I think Hilary Swank is pretty good in the movie compared to the guys, she doesn't really have a lot to do. And then, then I'm watching like Oppenheimer, and same thing with the women in that. Even though Emily Blunt has a great scene in that movie,
she has like, scene,
that was like her Oscar. That was like her Oscar nominated scene, right?
Yeah.
But again, not a lot of depth, not a lot of compared to the men. The same argument could be made for like Batman Begins. Like Rachel is just kind of
one note
girl, and they make her like a damsel in distress. They give her a bit more to do in The Dark Knight. But still, she's more of a plot device than like a character, because like her death sets off, you know, more stuff.
Sure, they wrote her as such an asshole too. She's such an asshole in that.
She is
that character.
So like I never really paid attention to it, but I was like, I guess that's his one weakness as a writer or filmmaker too, is that like the women don't have like a real sense of urgency in his movies. They do seem like they're just there to like drive aspects of the plot, but not narrowly, but not be like imported to the movie like from a real narrative standpoint. And I mean, I don't know if it's anything to really hold against him, because maybe he's not really writing for them. But
well, even Piper Perabo doesn't. I mean, she's only in it for a little bit, which again, her death sets off a whole thing. But even her in Scarlett Johansson's role would have been probably better than Scarlett Johansson. And well, I mean, and I think maybe what happened was, you know, it's his third film. It's kind of like, hey, I want to do this. Can I do this? Like, sure, take 40 million and do it. You did great on Batman Begins. We want a sequel, but if you want to do one in between here, we're like, can you shoehorn in Scarlett Johansson? She's having a moment, or like something like that. I feel like maybe he didn't have a ton of control, and you know, maybe that if you look at if you look at Christopher Nolan's filmography, Scarlett Johansson doesn't pop up ever again yet. I mean, she hasn't been
True.
so
Yeah.
you know, but again, she's an incredible actor. She's fun in the Marvel movies. She's deep in the deep movies. She deserves everything she has. I just think in this role, she was not given much to go on. It sounds
Yeah.
like it was a quick production, so maybe like fry, you know, all that shit. It feels like,
Yeah.
you know, she only had, again, like a one note character to kind of play to go between these two guys. So
Yeah, like we need you to snoop, and like that was like, you know, like her primary
yeah,
function.
yeah,
Like we need you to do that, and then also there's this, like, you know, the idea of like the feelings that she might be developing for. I mean, it just happened so fast. I was like, all right, that doesn't seem credible. Like whatever. I just kind of went with it because like every other aspect of the movie is so good. But like that's the kind of stuff like, oh, I wish they wouldn't write lines like that or have characters say like, you know, oh, but I am falling in love. Like what? Like how are you?
yeah,
You
yeah.
know, like you haven't been given much to do with said person, or like, you know, there hasn't been enough scenes to really establish. You know,
And she's a,
you know, possibly turncoating for this dude.
totally.
You know, like, yeah.
Well, and you know, for each guy's journal to wind up in each other's opposite hands, right? Like
Right.
she plays an integral role in that, and she also plays an integral role in saying to Hugh Jackman's character, like, he has all these props around, these like masks and like beards and like whatever, and he's like, oh, that's just what he wants you to see. It's a misdirection, you know. And you ask yourself, wait a minute, was she like telling him that because he wanted her to, and it was like a misdirection on misdirection, or was she being like straight up like honest, like, hey, because, you know, and even like when Christian Bale does the transported man for the first time and uses his twin,
Yeah.
he goes back to Hugh Jackman goes back to Michael Caine and is like, how's he doing it? And the first thing is like, he's using a double, and he's like, that's too simple, like, you know, or whatever. But my point, my point, well, and then these are all examples of how the trick is right in front of you the whole time. But my main point here is, for such an integral, like, all the things that are happening, the placement of the journals, the back and forth between the two guys, hey, steal this for me, do this for me, the love interest of one of the twins, and then it ends in what? Scarlett Johansson like walking out of a restaurant. That's the last that we see of her.
That is true. That like it ends that whole part of that, it ends with just like a like, I feel like there should be more to like.
No, yeah, she's the only character. She's literally the only character who doesn't get an ending, which feels
that doesn't get like a proper ending. Like, even though like Rebecca Hall, who isn't, you know, afforded as much screen time as the rest of them, but you still, in the few scenes that she has, it's enough to actually like feel bad for her character's outcome. There is a definitive end to that character, and you feel something because of that end, because, you know, mostly because of what she's able to do with a limited amount of screen time. But yeah, she is like Scarlett Johansson. If you're gonna give a name actress that part, it feels like you want to, once that person exits the movie, it should be more of like a definitive, like, oh wow, that was like the reason why she has to go. And you're right, she really just, the last we see of her, she just gets up and leaves and kind of is like, dude, that's more like a, oh, like she's so like turned off, like, oh wow, like, should you feel more about your dick? Like, yeah, that's basically what it is. And
it's definitely not. I mean, that's one of the missteps, I think, is they don't give her, for being such, you know, for every crucial plot point you don't really have without her character almost. And she just, it's like exit stage last, and that's it, you know. And that's, and every other character gets a blowout ending pretty much. Even the little daughter, it was, you know, barely in it, gets an awesome ending, and, you know, whatever. So yeah, I would say that's kind of fucked up, you know. Like,
I feel like the casting of Scarlett Johansson was more like you say, maybe more of a, I mean, I read that Christopher Nolan wanted her, like, when he met her, but I just wonder, like, if it was pushed more by, like, she is a, like, you have two male leads. You know, if you're going to have a female in the movie, it should be a recognizable one. Rebecca Hall was not. this was like her
Sure.
breakout movie
Yeah.
at the time. And you know, they have like Scarlett Johansson in the middle of the poster in this kind of like cloudy, like silhouette kind of thing, as if she is more important to the plot. If you were to just look at the key art,
Yeah.
so like you can tell they're selling it maybe as like, I mean, that's the interesting thing about movie marketing. Like they can try to sell it as something completely different. There's like this, it could be a movie about these two magicians. The way the key art's presented, it's almost like it's going to be some weird triangle between like those two and her. Like that, let's like make them think that's what they're going to go see.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I think that kind of is what they used her presence and her name for.
Yeah.
To sell. And like that is the only, and like it's so weird to talk about missteps in a Nolan movie because it's not like it's a doesn't ruin the movie. It doesn't ruin the movie by any means.
No.
But it is one of those things where you're just like, oh, like, yeah, it doesn't, she doesn't really have a lot to do. But like you said, she is a great actress, just like this might have been the wrong part for her. And then you're right, she does leave the movie in a whimper. It's just kind of like after all that, not like it's a ton of setup with her, but like you would think like there'd be more, considering how they kind of build up what little they do build up with her. There should be more of a payoff.
Right.
Not saying that she had to die or anything like that, but it should have been more than her just like leaving a restaurant in a huff.
Yeah, or at least like a little button in like the towards the end of her like sitting down and like telling some reporter like her version of the story or something, or like something like, you know, or maybe she's writing a book, or I don't know. You see her join up with Tesla later, and you're like, "What the fuck?" I mean, it's just something, you know.
Now, I do say I do like the implications of the scene, not so much the scene itself. Like learning later that like one brother like loved one and the other one loved the other, which is why, you know, he's so like he's so like cold about the whole situation. Right. So I do like the reveal of what that meant, but like I don't know, it just needed for her that character that she needed more than just a exit stage right from the restaurant.
Yeah, no, totally. And like, and this, and you just brought up another huge plot point that, you know, and it's such a piece of the movie that we haven't discussed. And I don't think people really go into this as much, but you know, obviously this is a show for people who have seen the movie. And if you haven't seen the movie, I don't know why you're still here listening to this, because you're going to be really upset when you're going to be
really mad when you're like, everything.
Yeah. Which is great about the show, that we don't have to stay in some continuous order. We can just bounce all over the place. Exactly. Like the movie, but bounces all over the place. And so the other part is that, you know, Christian Bale has a twin, and they keep that from the public. They keep that from everybody. They keep that from their girlfriends, wives, mistresses, children, right? Which brings up this weird, which
is so extreme, dude. To really think about, like, let's keep it from everyone in our personal.
But not only that, like let's like switch out. So, but we both get a little life instead of one in the shadows. So there's a clue throughout the movie where he says, "I love you" to his wife, and she said, "Oh, you do today." And then he says, "I love you" to the wife, and she's like, "Not today," you know. And that is supposed to how you're supposed to know, like, she's with the brother, right? And you know, she finds out at some point, somehow, we don't really know, and she hangs herself. Because she's been sleeping
with the wrong, which I know is devastating, but that shouldn't be.
Well, and like her entire relationship with him has been a lie. And she's probably not sure who in those days. She's probably not sure which one of them is the father.
Oh, the kid. Yeah, that's another.
You know what I'm saying? And so it. First of all, I wonder how she finds out. They never show that. Which
they never really explain it.
It's a brilliant move again on Nolan's part.
Her female intuition.
Yeah, for sure.
Finally.
Yeah, and so you have both men having sex with the wife and both men having sex with Scarlett Johansson at the same time. So they both. I mean, that's the pact that we assume that they made, is they would just sub in and out of each other's, you know, stuff. I would imagine one is off learning, you know, magic and watching shows, like to be able to bring back.
The other one has to be like a dutiful husband,
right? And then they switch
either
off.
Dutiful husband or a dutiful mister.
Yeah,
they all. Yeah, I mean that's and they're like, we have to remain dedicated to what this ruse is. And that's what makes that kind of sad too. Even in life too, in order to sell what they're trying to sell.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's interesting too. Like, you know, when it's just thinking about like the whole the whole art behind like the magic and everything and what they're trying to accomplish on
Mhm.
that level, yeah, you can get it. You can maybe get what they're doing, but when it comes to like, no, we need to do this in every aspect of our lives, it becomes
Mhm.
a much bigger thing, a little bit of a sad thing too, because it's like,
Oh yeah, it's really
you
sad.
know, because they're each sacrificing a little bit of something,
Yeah.
and then also, hurting the other people involved in their crazy fucking scenario that don't even know what they're doing.
Yeah, well, and and I don't want this, so I hope this never happens. But in a different timeline, I would be very interested to see a prequel film about the Borden brothers or whatever, the Christian Bale characters, right? How they grew up young and loving magic and magic tricks, and maybe they saw a poster of the great whomever was before, whatever, and
Before
they
them.
and where the idea came from to pull this off. What were their parents like? Did they run away from home? Like, that would be, to me, I would love to see or read the prequel story to that, to see how they would come to that decision,
Yeah.
but also come to the decision to absolutely like deceive and sort of like I mean, when you're when you're letting your brother bang your girlfriend and not telling, I mean, it gets into a kind of an area where
Well,
it's like,
there has to be some kind of rush to that deception too, right? Like the whole like
oh
they
yeah,
don't know. I mean,
yeah,
like, and that even goes into like the rush of like getting these tricks like absolutely right too. I mean, there's like
mhm,
that is a life that they're almost everyone in this movie is living, where
yeah,
they're feeding off that excitement of like uh tricking everybody. I mean,
mhm,
they like and successfully doing it. So I mean, I think the where it kind of I would love to know what it was like for them growing up, but I think
mhm,
to the point where they kept doing it is because they fell uh almost in love and lust with like the whole idea of
sure,
like the deception of doing it
yeah,
and then maintaining that illusion because and then once they probably got to a point where the illusion was like it kind of got away from them too. It's gone so far that they
oh
can't
yeah.
really step out of it unless they want to just come out and come clean. But
Yeah, and like were there fights over who gets to go with who, and
yeah,
all of that. But then, the other part of it is, if you think about it, they were keeping their twindom fucking secret for the purposes of just one trick.
yeah,
Like, right? And so they were studying magic to be able to pull it off, but it's not until the split, which until Jackman's wife is killed,
yeah,
it's not until the split that they actually go and do the transported man in a very small theater. And it's like
yeah,
pretty fucking creepy how they do it, with where he bounces the ball, shuts the
yeah,
door, and then it, like, the gasping of the audience. I mean, that to me is really great filmmaking. And
yeah, yeah.
so they do it, and there the music kicks in, and like the reaction of like Hugh Jackman taking off like the fake fucking mustache and being like, I saw the most incredible, like, he's got the most incredible, this is a
How
trick.
did he do it?
Oh yeah, he
Yeah.
becomes obsessed
And then he
right
does
away.
something right there, that right at that moment.
So
Like I
their
didn't know
whole
how
life
to.
was leading up to that trick, and I wonder if they were holding on to it until later. But the split up between him and Hugh Jackman, and Michael Caine kind of tossing him out, right? You killed the
Yeah,
lady or whatever the fuck, the not
yeah,
shit, right? I wonder if that forced their hand to then do the transported man early, which then just totally starts this whole thing,
yeah,
on a collision course, right?
yeah. No, I agree.
And it speaks to, like, a lot of Nolan's film is about obsession. Oppenheimer, um, uh, why I keep getting this confused? Inception. I keep wanting to say
Yeah, there you
Insomnia. Inception,
go.
Memento. Fuck. I know I'm gonna leave a bunch of them out. I mean, even stuff, stuff with the Joker,
Yeah, yeah. There's something in Batman and all that.
Bruce Wayne. He's getting beat the shit out of every night, and he's obsessed with this. So he has these movies about obsession, and this one is like where that idea really sort
There's
of
a
like,
lot of concepts of like duality in a lot of his movies too. Like you kind of like
yeah,
living like different like that's an Insomnia too. I mean, there's like the duality of like Al Pacino's character being like
hmm,
a good cop, but also a dirty cop because of
right,
like the things that he's done as well.
absolutely, yeah,
And then of course Batman is like an inherent duality of like Bruce Wayne, the man, and then this other person that he's picked up to.
Yeah, and famously we know that there was at one time, just before Scorsese made The Aviator with Leo DiCaprio, that Nolan was going to make a Howard Hughes biopic with Jim Carrey, and the whole script is focused on this man's obsession to the point of like him damaging his health,
Right.
peeing in jars and like all of his crazy behavior. But it was just based around this idea of like psychological obsession with something. And so, he's a filmmaker who really doesn't, he's not afraid to go into the obsession part, which I think is brilliant, because obsession is a gift and a curse, right?
Yeah.
And
you can become consumed at it, which is like the curse part of it.
Yeah, sure, for sure, absolutely.
It can take over your entire life.
Totally.
If you allow it to. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of those themes in like a lot of Nolan's movies, whether intentional or not, which I like, and there's a lot of it in here. I mean, I have never, what I can think of, hopefully not. I have never, when I was watching it, I was like, have I really been ever that consumed by something? Like I have to succeed at something so much that like it almost drives me crazy. And I was like, I don't think I've ever gotten that far. But while I'm watching it, even though there's a part of me, I'm like looking at Hugh Jackman's character and I'm like, dude, this guy's crazy. But then I'm also thinking it from the other side of it, like there's also I've seen people be passionate about something, like really passionate to the point where like it's all consuming. And so I got that too. And I guess like one of the reasons that like Christopher Nolan even hired Hugh Jackman for the part is because not only did he think he was a great actor, but he was like Hugh Jackman because he is a song and dance Broadway guy. He knows how to play the audience really well on a stage. Yeah. So that was like one of the main reasons he cast him. And I think we always, I tend to forget sometimes like Hugh Jackman is that guy. Because he's so good at like turning on like the machismo for a lot of his parts. But then he is like 100% loves theater, Broadway, playing to an audience. Like that is who he is. Yeah. And that was something that kind of comes across here too. And like that kind of like desire to please the audience too, that you can see that in that character as well. And I think that plays really well into that whole character's obsession with getting that absolutely right.
I tend to like become obsessed with anything I feel passionate about. You tend to get obsessed. Hence the sign behind my head here, over here. Oh, wait, over here. And like, so I can relate, because I feel like once, to reference again, Inception, the most dangerous parasite into the human mind is an idea, right? And so when I get an idea, like a sex podcast that I host, or before in my nightclub promoter days, like I just lived and breathed it until there was nothing left to live and breathe, right? And then I had to find another sort of outlet or whatever. So I can relate to the obsession piece. I mean, ambition, drive, sure. I mean, I don't even really know what I'm driving at half the time. I just know that I want it, and so I just go. So I can relate to that. I tend to be more of a Christian Bale obsessive versus Hugh Jackman, because Hugh Jackman's character in this was like really pompous and like really like
that was like, I'm glad you pointed it out, because there are similar, that they both are obsessed with what they want to do. But one is definitely more arrogant than the other.
And the other guy literally died for his obsession. He was hung.
So there is and I love that you get that juxtaposition between just the casting of those two people, because they are very different men too. Like I think that's very important. Like picking them. I just read too, like, because you asked, you made a comment about, I wonder if the script was just sitting on like a desk somewhere during lunch during Batman Begins, and I guess Christopher Nolan didn't even think about Christian Bale, but Christian Bale like had read the script. I'm assuming somehow in some kind of like interchange between Batman Begins and this, and was like, I really want to do it. And Christopher Nolan hadn't even thought about it, and then he was like, oh wow, why didn't I think of you for it? And he's like, after he said it, he was like, there was no one else I could think to play it. after that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I mean,
Edward Norton wasn't available. He was doing The Illusionist.
yeah, that would be an interesting movie to look back on because I do remember liking it. I just don't like it's been so long since I've seen it that I
Yeah.
don't remember a lot of details other
Me
than the three
neither.
people. Like I remember Edward Norton's in it, Paul Giamatti, Jessica Biel. It's shot
Jessica
well.
Biel is in there? Oh my
Yeah,
god.
yeah. That's when she was still able to do like nothing against her now because she does a lot of good TV stuff now, but
Right.
that's when she was like kind of breaking out in the movies, like more important movies. But yeah, she's
Sure.
in it. But yeah, I don't remember much about it. I do remember at the time, like once this came out, it was just like Illusionist. What?
Yeah. Oh yeah. It
little
totally
bit.
erased. It totally erased that. Yeah. Yeah. And also too, like speaking of dying for your obsession, what a fucking absolutely in one of my favorite scenes. What an incredible scene of him willingly going to his hanging and then literally, do you have any last words? And his last words are abracadabra.
Yeah.
Like what a fucking badass scene because he knows now the trick is complete.
I
You know
mean,
what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah. And
Unreal.
that's how you like, and with confidence too.
Oh
You know,
yeah,
like,
yeah. Like I pulled this off.
like you've all been fooled.
We knew that this could end up that way. It's also really cool when he's like, he pretends to like fumble around and drop his ball and whatever in the lunchroom, and then the guy, the police officer in there, the jail guard is like giving him shit or whatever, and
Yeah.
and then he goes to like hit him or grab him or something, and you realize that in that little twist up where he's like going on the floor looking for the ball, he's actually taken his chains off and put them on the guard, where the guard's like chained to the table. Shit like that is just so great.
I was surprised to learn that this was mostly filmed in LA, some locations in Colorado. A lot of it was filmed in the Universal backlot.
Yeah.
I don't know why I thought this would be like an on location kind of shoot. I thought it was funny that Rebecca Hall got the part and they had to relocate to Los Angeles, even though she's from the area in which the movie takes place.
Typical Hollywood.
But it looks like it could have been done on location. I was surprised to learn that it was shot in LA. Mostly on the Universal backlot, which is a great backlot. But yeah, I did not know that.
It looks incredible, for that.
It's supposed to be London. I can't believe they made it relocate. I mean, that's funny.
Yeah, and the Colorado Spring, and I could be wrong, and maybe you have this information. I'm not sure, but the stuff with Tesla is in the film is incredibly historically accurate. And what I mean by that is the Colorado Springs thing is real. And there was a real location in Colorado Springs with Tesla where Tesla was doing some very questionable things. There's people to this day that say that you can do the light bulb trick. You can plug a light bulb into the ground in Colorado Springs still to this day. And if you know the spot, it'll light up. Edison famously was going around like burning Tesla's stuff and frying animals and blaming Tesla for it and all of that stuff. And I do remember reading that originally this film was gonna be like a Tesla film, and somehow that didn't happen, and yet he still kept Tesla in the picture. That character in the picture.
Sure.
Which is mind-blowing, right? Because either the project started as a Tesla biopic or a Tesla story. I don't know if it was a biopic, but
right, and then morphs.
Yeah, morphs, and then he absorbs some guy's book and whatever. So I don't know if in the book Tesla plays a character. I don't know if that was added by Nolan, but I would definitely wanted to mention that too, because I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, definitely. And he only wanted David Bowie for that part. David Bowie turned it down a few times. He had to go personally meet him and talk to him about it.
Yeah,
and that's when David Bowie said yes. I guess this was a time when you wouldn't automatically say yes to Christopher Nolan.
No,
he was only like a few movies in.
Sure,
but I thought that was interesting, and of course, David Bowie's probably like, "Yo, I'm a legend. I'm not gonna just say yes to
a very
anything."
small part." Yeah,
It's not a big role, at all.
5 minutes screen time. Yeah,
which
maybe was more attractive to David Bowie, because again, we're talking about David fucking Bowie here. But then again, you can't see the Tesla character played by anybody but David Bowie, and it's so
No,
cool.
I can't at all.
Yeah, it's so cool. I think some of the posters said and David Bowie, like
Bowie, yeah.
yeah,
That's the kind of credit you give to someone like that. That's like,
yeah,
when they're the
yeah,
most important person in the cast.
yeah,
Everyone fills their roles well, except for Scarlett Johansson. I hate to say that. Everyone else
yeah.
seems to like really inhabit their roles pretty well.
Mhm.
I mean, and it's not even like she's not Razzie bad. I don't even want to think that she's like
No,
horrible.
it's just
That's a questionable accent.
I think that she just didn't have a lot to do with her part, and her dialect coach should be fired.
Probably.
Frey.
Or she should have hung out with like Rebecca Hall for like a day.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that's what
Yeah.
I'm supposed. Yeah, there we go.
No, I agree.
My bad. And it's so funny too. Apparently, not only did The Illusionist come out in 2006, but another movie called Scoop, which also stars Scarlett Johansson and Hugh Jackman, directed by Woody Allen, came out in 2006. And the movie is about an American journalist and a magician being guided by the spirit of a reporter to investigate a British aristocrat who might be a serial killer. So 3 movies involving musicians came out in 2006.
British musicians,
yeah. And Scarlett Johansson and Hugh Jackman starred in 2 of them.
Wow. Wow.
They wanted a throwback to that time when it was like, Deep Impact, Armageddon, Dante's Peak, Volcano.
For real.
They were like, all those movies were coming out like
having
the
a Magic's having a moment in 2006.
Yeah. The Prestige has a 70% fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes. I thought it was going to be a bit higher, but it's 3% higher than Interstellar. So Interstellar has a 73%. Also surprised that that's kind of not like whoa, but like it's not as high as I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
The movie received a B cinema score from opening day audiences. Mostly good reviews. I do want to read a bad one first.
Sure.
Variety said the film was gimmicky. Though he felt the cast did well in underwritten roles. The Hollywood Reporter felt that the characters are a little more than sketches, remove their obsessions, and the 2 musicians have little personality. They both of them praised David Bowie, though. The Hollywood Reporter and Variety did. Emmanuel Levi said whether viewers perceive the Prestige as intricately complex or just unnecessarily complicated would depend on a large degree on their willingness to suspend disbelief for 2 hours. He did give the film a B, but question whether or not it all works or does it fall apart after you leave your screening of it.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, and like I said before, I know the author of the book and Christopher Nolan. He felt the same way. He like signed over his work for that to happen, and then he was not a fan. I think he said something similar about the plot too. So, or whatever. But yeah,
Roger Ebert, even though he gave it 3 stars out of 4. Though I want to see if you agree with him. He said that the revelation at the end was a fundamental flaw of the movie and felt like a cheat.
No, he wasn't paying. He wasn't watching closely. Okay, that's the first line of the movie. Are you watching closely? And clearly, the great Roger Ebert was not watching closely. Okay?
He said the pledge of Nolan's The Prestige is that the film, having been metaphorically sawed in 2, will be restored. It fails when it cheats, as for example, if the whole woman produced on the stage were not the same one, so unfortunately cut in 2. I mean, I don't agree with him.
No, I don't agree either. Yeah,
I don't think it falls.
Having a bad day, probably.
The novel of the book did comment on how great the movie looked. Did comment on aspects of the story that he didn't agree with. Overall, didn't think it was a horrible adaptation. That feels like backhanded compliments.
Yeah, a lot of them. Yeah.
But he did say he did have issues with some story, either changes or things that weren't elaborated on.
Yeah, I think Nolan probably took aspects of the book, as you would when you're making. I mean, because you can't. When they made East of Eden, it was only about 150 pages in the middle of a 450 page, but you can't do the whole thing. But yeah, I mean, I think Nolan drilled into the obsession piece, the twist ending, technically it is a period piece, so there's that. And so I think he, I really want to read the book and see how
much has changed.
Or what else we missed, or
what maybe he left out. Yeah,
for sure.
In retrospective reviews, the film has grown in stature considerably since its release. The AV Club named The Prestige as one of the best films of the 2000s. The film was included in American Cinematographer's Best Shot Film of 1998 2002 through 2008 list, ranking at number 36. More than 17,000 people around the world participated in the final vote. And in 2020, Empire Magazine ranked it among the 100 greatest movies of the 21st century.
Wow.
This is a movie that I think I won't say revisionist history because I feel like it got a pretty solid reception when it came out.
Sure. Yeah.
But I think this is the one movie that people tend to bring up the most when they're bringing up either underrated. It's either this one or to a lesser extent Insomnia is like underrated Christopher Nolan movies.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it is because it is like placed solidly in the middle between the man that he was, the movies he was directing before this, and then the movies he directed after this, because he hasn't gone back to this at all since. Like Batman Begins was like the start, and then he was like, and I feel like The Prestige was like, hey, I'll do The Dark Knight, but let me do this little smaller movie first.
Yeah.
But then after that, it was just like he got a lot more like tools to play with, a lot more like toys to play with, and he hasn't looked back. No. And I don't. I already said how I felt about that earlier. How do you feel about? Because he has said publicly, like, "Hey, I'm in the position as director to make really big movies, and I don't want to waste that opportunity." Like, so do you think that is a fair, right statement, or like, could he bounce back and forth between like doing mid-budget movies and doing blockbuster movies too?
For better or for worse, I think that he's stuck probably making the big. I don't necessarily think it needs to be big, heavy special effects stuff, but like big stars. I mean, the man made Oppenheimer a thing. I mean, that
was like $100 million movie too. That wasn't like a huge like budget, but it is big in scope,
sure,
compared to like to this, I guess.
Yeah, I think that we'll get a mix. It'll be a big scope film, but maybe on a topic that's like a little more intricate and requires a little more. He somehow has made these really complex, hard to sort of digest in one viewing films. Like he's made them popcorn cinema in a way, and I think it's doing a huge service to everybody's brains and everybody's fucking wallet when they pay $25 for a ticket and they go into IMAX and whatever. I mean, it's he is where he belongs, I think, in terms of spectacle. But there was rumors he was going to do a James Bond trilogy set in the 60s. I mean, fuck, dude. Who doesn't want that?
He loves horror movies. I mean, I've learned so much about Christopher Nolan. Like when he was promoting Oppenheimer, did not know that he was a horror movie guy. Like, I think he would love to make one, but again, that would be a smaller scale movie if he did.
Or would it?
That's true, right? Yeah. He's also a big Fast and Furious fan, and like he told people, he recommended that people like kind of start with Tokyo Drift. Like I was dying. Like he like loves those movies. And I think the cool thing about that is because he looks like he'd be like, oh, like Mr. like prestige filmmaker. I only watch I only look at like
foreign films,
like foreign films and like But no, he is the kind of person that think there is an art form to every type of filmmaking. So I
think he's right. Yeah.
And I appreciate that. I will say this too. I realized how powerful he was as a name when he released Dunkirk in the middle of like the July of the year it came out, and that movie made a ton of money. I don't think, or even like, and then he like perfected that with Oppenheimer. I don't think any other director could have dropped those two historical kind of epics in the middle of the summer and had them make nearly as much money as they did.
Yeah,
I mean, and I think it's because he is such a reliable name. Like he's such a reliable filmmaker at this point. Like I think more so than like the concept of the movie star, it's like directors whose names are above certain films are driving them box office wise. Tarantino's another one. Whenever he makes his last movie, that'll probably be the same thing for him. Spielberg, it goes back and forth, but he has nothing to prove anymore. So like he doesn't need to be that guy. But like in this new range of like filmmakers, it's like I have friends who don't even like go to the movies a lot, but they'll go for a Christopher Nolan movie.
Yeah,
that
it's like
is
a once every 3-year kind of a thing, you know?
yeah. I mean, I think
Yeah,
that's how important it is, and maybe that is why he's like you said, he's not making what we would call like typical tent pole like popcorn movies.
sure.
He is making stuff with a little bit more depth, so maybe it is good that he is making these bigger movies that still have like the narrative heart of something smaller.
Mhm.
They don't
No,
really
yeah.
have like popcorn movie intentions
Yeah.
at all.
I mean, I think I would like to see him go back and do the Howard Hughes biopic and you know, on a large, with a $100 million budget. I think I mean,
Yeah,
it's doable, and I think you cast the who's who, whatever, combined with the old guard like he does very well. Maybe you get Jim Carrey to do it, maybe you don't. But I think that enough time has passed since The Aviator,
that
and
you can do another take on it.
yeah, and I think who doesn't want to see Christopher Nolan's obsession, psychological based take on Howard Hughes, and but there is a lot. I mean, he nailed the biopic. Well, I guess it's kind of a biopic with Oppenheimer, but it's his
Yeah, I
namesake,
mean,
Oppenheimer. So
yeah,
um,
and it covered other aspects of his life. I mean, yeah, I think
yeah.
he nailed that pretty
But
well.
then also too, like maybe he'll go. I mean, I'm someone who really loves Tenet. I know a lot of people don't, but I do.
I'm not a fan of his sound design in my room. That wasn't fun.
No, you got,
Not
you
on surround
got,
sound where you're like trying to hear dialogues, and you turn it all the way up,
yeah,
and then all of a sudden you just get like a big BOM,
oh
like,
man,
just shakes your entire room. Like,
yeah,
okay, I'm
it'll
turning it
work
down
the
now.
shit out of that subwoofer. But yeah, you got to see
Yeah,
you got to see it in IMAX, and I think that they'll continue to bring that. But
yeah,
he's also really obsessed with like Stanley Kubrick and shit. And Stanley Kubrick was making
yeah,
these giant films. And what did he do after 2001? He made a bunch of that were smaller scale films,
yeah.
And so I think there's room to do both. But I think the cool thing about it is he's got the keys to Hollywood. He can do whatever the fuck he wants. And so now I think we're gonna see something really interesting for his next picture, whatever that
Well,
may be.
this is a good question for you since this is a movie that he directed. What studio do you think gets his next movie? Because
Mm,
I know Warner Brothers wants him back because he had that long picture deal with him. Began with Insomnia, fell apart when they kind of wanted to just release Tenet at home during
yeah.
COVID. So that's why he went to Universal, made Oppenheimer for them, made a lot of money. Does he stay with Universal because they I mean got him an Oscar? I mean
Yeah.
they didn't get him an Oscar, but like
Sure.
a studio that he worked for, that's how he got his first Oscar. Do you go back home to Warner Brothers because they were very good to him for a long time, or do you try somewhere new?
I think he stays with Universal.
I kind of think so too.
Yeah.
I think the relationship from start to finish, from like the beginning creative process to the release to everything after that, the
Right.
award season push, I think that whole relationship was very fruitful and they worked really well together. I
Yeah.
don't think there was any conflict whatsoever and I don't really think they even interrupted him as far as like stepping in and doing much. They were just so happy to have him.
Oh God,
I
yeah. Yeah.
I know he did some great things with Warner Brothers though, and I know
Mhm.
there's like but that's a whole other thing. Like I don't really the whole Zaslav stuff there. Warner Brothers is like not what it used to be.
Yeah, exactly.
anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
anymore. But I kind of think he stays with Universal too because I'm trying to think of where he can go to Paramount, but they're going through that whole like merger deal that's
Yeah.
going on now too. Like, I can't see him working with Disney or anything like that. So like,
Nope.
it's like
Yeah,
I
not
think
at all.
an A24 Christopher Nolan movie would be pretty legit, I think. But
Yeah. Yeah, but I think
I don't
Universal.
think they can afford him though, probably.
No, yeah, maybe he could produce some stuff, but
Yeah,
I think he did. Universal did treat him good, and they provided him a home when he left. Whatever,
yeah,
and they just said, "Do what you want." Sure, yeah, here's a check, like or whatever. So,
yeah.
I think he stays with Universal. I think he actually probably like builds another whole set of his filmography. Universal, to be honest.
Yeah.
I
I mean, and
mean,
I wonder if he's reluctant to kind of sign another like
oh,
deal
I don't
like
think
that.
he's going to sign a deal at all. I
Yeah,
think,
he'll just like I'll give you what I want when I want
yeah,
if I
he'll do
want
whatever the fuck he wants.
to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
He literally has the keys to Hollywood. I mean, without Christopher Nolan, we don't really. I mean, well, without Christopher Nolan, we don't have IMAX really, because he was the one that pushed that platform forward, and
really insisted on shooting with IMAX cameras.
Sure.
I mean,
yeah,
that, and that's the difference between stuff that is shot in IMAX and then as opposed to stuff that's just like reformatted to be shown in IMAX. Later, that's a complete difference. Yeah,
totally. Yeah.
Absolutely. He really cares about the art. I mean, he cares about it in a much different way. Like Tarantino is like the human encyclopedia of film, but the technical stuff, I feel like Christopher Nolan is just. And I also love hearing about how he makes movies, and this goes all the way. And I think it's because he started with like, back when he did like a smaller movie, like The Following, through Memento, through his even his bigger stuff. Everyone says that when you work on a Christopher Nolan movie, it's not an extravagant kind of space. It's like everyone that worked on Oppenheimer said they stayed in some dingy, not so great motels. It was like, it's a very much like every man for themselves, not in a very like negligent way, but
sure,
it's like the movie comes first over your comfort, basically. And he does so in a very respectful way, but everyone that's worked with him said that's kind of what it is. There's no like it's not very Hollywood working with him.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I think that's amazing. Yeah, I would expect nothing less.
Yeah, I think that's very important. So as we wrap up, any final thoughts about the film itself, and then you also we got to, if you feel comfortable giving it a score, as well.
Yeah. So I'm gonna leave you in the audience with my favorite. When I've been holding on to this whole time, with my favorite part of the entire film, The Prestige. It's very quick, it's very small, but its implications are so massive that you will go back and rethink everything we just said, right? When Hugh Jackman and Michael Caine have the transported man trick with the cage that the cloning. We don't even know if it's a cloning thing, but whatever. And they go to the theater owner to show him the trick. Hugh Jackman gets in the cage. He gets zapped. He disappears, right?
Right.
And the theater owner says, "That's it. You can't. He's got to come back and come back." He's like, "That's the trick." Like, and then all of a sudden, from behind them, here up walks Hugh Jackman. The theater owner says to Michael Caine and Hugh Jackman, "Oh my God, real magic. I haven't seen real magic since," and then Michael Caine or Hugh Jackman cuts him off before he could finish. "I haven't seen real magic since," and it's such a Nolan thing to do, and most people miss it, but that lives rent-free in my head like every day, like more than it should. "I haven't seen real magic since," but the look on the guy's face, he's totally stunned and he
like shocked. Yeah.
And there's a big story there. "I haven't seen real magic since." So yeah, I would encourage everybody to go obsess on that piece as well. They never go back into it. They never explore it. They just drop it. And I think it's fucking perfect filmmaking. Maybe there's more in the book about it. I don't know, but that's my favorite piece of that movie. I mean, on a scale of 1 to 5 stars, I'm giving this 5 stars. One of my favorite movies.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
I will 4.5 it.
Okay.
I feel like I'm taking half point away, not for Scarlett Johansson. No, I'll Freddie. Yeah, I'll 4.5 it. It holds up really well, and like it demands repeat viewings. It's really well acted. It's shot well. And I've said this before on the show a lot when we bring him up. He's never made a bad movie, and this is one of his really good ones. And I just love that, like, it plays like a magic trick. Like the whole movie is just one big sleight of hand. And I will throw up a poll, or at least a question poll, and ask everyone when the episode drops, when we put clips out from the episode, what their theories are about the whole device and like what it actually does. Because I'm curious now to know what other people think.
Oh yeah,
think about that.
Tag me in all that shit, because I want to see it. I want to watch that closely. Are you watching closely?
But it's really well done, and like, I mean, again, the only thing it made me miss was that he made used to make movies like this. I want him to make more movies like this. It kind of reminds me of Denis Villeneuve in the same way it's like, oh,
Yeah.
I love what you're doing with Dune, but like
Mhm.
make another Prisoners. I would love if you made something like that again. Like,
Yeah.
you know, I miss like the kind of more grounded stuff because they are capable of it. But
Yeah.
you know, once you give them like bigger toys to play with, I get it. You don't want to like, you don't necessarily want to go back and play with like your hand-me-downs. No, I understand.
Yeah, I mean,
And
you never know. I mean, it's possible. I mean, they can do whatever he wants. He turned this one out in between Batman and the Dark Knight. So, right? I mean, no, wait. Yeah.
Yeah, so this came, yeah, there was Batman Begins, The Prestige, and then he went back in the, you know, Batman
Gotham.
mode,
Yeah. Yep.
and then, you know, and then Obsession, Dark, everything's been big since
That's
this.
true. That's true.
Everybody, you know, I was watching Vice has this show called Icons on Earth, and they talk about different movie stuff. They covered Spider-Man recently. They're doing Harry Potter right now, and they're also doing Tom Cruise, and they were going through his early filmography, and they're kind of like at the mid 90s point.
Mm.
And again, like this is an actor, I know it's not the same as director, but like, you just miss like what they used to be capable of, right? The things they used to do that were so much more grounded and not as big. And it's just like, you know, like I feel like if I was an actor, I would want to do it all. I wouldn't mind, like I would want to do like a smaller art house movie, and then do something like that was big and like more ambitious. Like
I do think Tom Cruise is going to go back to doing more independent small films. I think he's going
to. He is working with Alejandro Inarritu, so that's good. That could be. Coming.
He's focusing on his Oscar track, I think now.
Yeah. But who are we? I mean, Christopher Nolan, you can do whatever you want. I'm just saying. I'm just saying this makes me miss what you used to do.
Sure.
And now I know you can't necessarily tell people what movies we're going to do in the future.
Sure.
Are there any hints as to what they could look forward to that are in your repertoire that might be coming?
Man. So okay, I am focused in on there's two movies in particular that I cannot fucking wait to do with you. Both are mid 90s, early to mid 90s, action / maybe a little comedy in there. One of them works off of a script. They're both one and dones. Okay. One of them, and here's the clue. One of them works off a script that was meant for a big action. It was meant to be the second part of a big action franchise. And for whatever reason, that franchise passed on it and did whatever. But this script then wound up being a one-off. And they're both incredibly good in their own right, and they've aged incredibly well. And I can't wait to do them. I really can't wait to do them.
That'll be fun. I'm gonna let the listeners know now. I feel like something like Vanilla Sky won't happen until like this is like episode like 50, like it's like a milestone for the show. The good thing between Dustin being on more often and then other people also joining in the deep dives, we will get to that number a lot faster.
Sure. True. Yeah.
But like because someone was like, "Are you going to do Vanilla Sky yet?" And I was like, "No, not yet."
It's coming. We keep having conversations about it, and like you're right, a milestone episode, or maybe even perhaps like maybe we surprise you with a big special. I don't know. It's up to you.
I know it could be because I could talk about that movie for days. I love that movie.
Yeah.
I know. We were kind of like in the minority sometimes because I have one friend that like can. She tells the story of like seeing this, like, and she was like, even me in 2001, who was like young, was like, what the fuck? What was that? Because like the previews, like, she was like, I rewatched trailers for that movie recently. That is not the movie they were selling when that movie came out. And I was like, it's true. It's not. It's a hard movie to market for what it really is.
For sure.
The trailers made it look like it was some like like Cameron Diaz is like some crazy obsessed ex-girlfriend, and that's the movie. And then you got something completely different.
Yeah.
Not the case. But yeah, we will do that one eventually. We haven't forgotten about it.
No, just, how could we?
It was very, very important. But yeah, as always, thank you for joining us on our deep dive spinoff. Like I said, he'll be on much more often. He has movies in his chamber ready to go, so we don't have to like even. I'll have to watch them once I figure out once I know what they are.
I'll tell you. As soon as we're done, I'll
we're
tell
cut,
you.
yeah. And then and so look forward to that. Well, we have a lot more stuff coming up between this show and the main show and Tales of Horror. I don't even know if Dustin really loves horror movies, but
I love horror movies.
If you want to participate in that in any way, you can as well.
I would love to. I would love
down to chat up some horror movies.
Absolutely.
That did really well for us last year, and we met some really cool, fun horror movie podcasts in the process doing it. So,
hell yeah.
We already have some stuff like some people have made some really fun, interesting choices. I have like a whole list of movies that I sent to people that want to do it, and they've been picking a lot of stuff that's kind of left to center, which is more fun. Like, I mean, everyone else is going to be doing like the Friday the 13th and Halloweens and stuff like that. So,
not me.
I'm more than happy to do like the smaller like horror movies that a lot of people don't know about. So that's why they were included on that list. Also, we have people that actually came and were like, because I told them you can either take from the list or if you have one that you really want to do, just let me know. Some people came with their own that were impressive. So like we are excited to get into that. I've told people before my original intention was to make this like a horror movie podcast when I was approached by playlists on like what kind of podcast I wanted to do. But the co-host at the time was not a horror movie person, so we settled on just making it like a movie podcast.
Sure.
So this is like this 2 months out of the year is my only time to like make this feel like it is kind of a horror movie podcast. And
yeah,
so
lean in for sure.
It's fun. So looking forward to that. As always, you can catch us wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Good Pods. They are all great. But if you want to find us on the Playlist Studio app, that would also be good because they are our podcast network and they do a lot of heavy lifting for us, much like they did today when they helped quickly edit our last episode when we thought we lost it. So thank you so much. You can get that in the iOS store or in the Google Play Store. You can also find us on YouTube and subscribe to the YouTube channel if you want to see our handsome faces as well. Dustin, before we take off, let everyone know where they can find your podcast. It will be linked at the bottom of the description of this episode. I know it's been linked before, but you get to plug every time you're on. So go.
Yeah, no. So I host a sex and dating podcast every single Wednesday. We're coming up on 3 years. I will never miss a Wednesday. It's my obsession. Are you watching closely? You can find my show, Sex Party with Dustin Ribka. It's available on all podcast platforms and YouTube if you want to watch the video. It's a tightrope walk between chaos and value every week. It's fun, but you walk away with it from the show with some good stuff. So come hang out, come join the party. You can find the show on Instagram at sexparty.fm. You can find me at Dustin Ribka on Instagram. Drop me a line, say hello. Yeah, that's the plug.
Nice. I got my friends to listen to some of it. They it's particularly girls, so I was wanting to know what they thought about it. And they were like, they listened to some of it, they were like, I like it because they were like, it doesn't make me feel gross. It feels like I'm being educated on something rather than being like, ew, what are they talking about? So there you go. I mean,
that's the greatest that's the greatest fucking compliment I could hope for, because for me, it's like we want to be horny and crazy and oh my God, she did what or whatever, but we also want you to walk away with it like, oh, like I'm going to try that trick with my dating app. You know what I mean? I'm going to try that trick in the bedroom or like whatever. So that's exactly what I want the show to be. Every episode needs to be equally valuable as equally wild. And so that's
I suggested too, because like some of them were reluctant because they were like, oh, it's hosted by a guy. So I was like, oh, well, don't think because it's hosted by a dude that's going to be just like, they had preconceived notions about what it was. And then, and then they're like, oh, it actually is very like educational and like it provides like a really nice open space for people to just talk freely about that stuff.
Yeah, it's not like the woman hating red pill podcast. It's actually the exact opposite of that. So
it's fun to listen to. I listen to it. I think it's fun and educational, and I love that he could talk fat and talk movies. Everyone's multifaceted, so it's very great to kind of see. And also, I forgot to mention that we're coming up on 200 episodes of the main show, actually, too.
Wow.
Jackson and I we figured out what we're going to do. It's not going to be like this big blowout kind of thing. We just kind of figured out like what we want to do for it. That essentially we're going to like, we actually found a movie that he picked that I haven't seen, and I gave him a movie that he hasn't seen, and we're going to kind of dive into both of those equally, and then we are gonna do some fun stuff that we got from our listeners to kind of do on the show and answer some
Nice.
questions from you guys as well to ring in 200. It's crazy because Jackson has not been on since the beginning, but he's been on over 100 episodes and been on longer than any co-host that was on the show. So
Wow.
feels like he's been here since the beginning. So
Yeah, no, congrats on 200
yeah.
episodes. That's not an easy feat at all.
Yeah, so it'll be fun. It's been like it started out as so much work, and then we almost stopped, and I'm glad we didn't because it's been a hell of a ride. So really happy to get that out there for you guys. And Jackson's going to be doing that on top of a very busy class schedule. He's very busy right now, so that's why you'll also hear a lot of guest people hopping on the new show, on anniversary episodes, on Tales of Horror. Jackson's going to be on as much as he can. He was on our news episode that will be out later this week because he had time off last week. He has some time off this weekend, and then from there, it's just going to be whenever he can be on. He is a great sport. I said we should take a break while he was busy with classes, and he didn't want to slow down the momentum of the show, so he was like, just have people come on in his place, and when he's able to come back full-time, he will come back full-time. So kudos to him for thinking about the show as well and not just being like, yeah, can you pause while I'm gone?
Yeah, right? Come on. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah.
All right, guys. So until next time, thank you for listening. Dustin as well. Thank you again for joining me.
Of course.
We'll see you soon.